My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 33 years old. And for most of my life, I believed that if something important was about to fall apart, it would be obvious, loud, messy, impossible to ignore. But the truth is, the most defining moments of your life don't always arrive like explosions. Sometimes, they sound like a casual sentence spoken over the rustle of fabric and the soft glow of a phone screen. I work in commercial real estate analysis in a large West Coast city. My life runs on structure, calendars, spreadsheets, forecasts, projections. I don't improvise major decisions. I prepare for them. That's probably why I didn't react the way most people expect when everything started to break. My boyfriend Ethan is 30. We had been together for just over 3 years, living together for the last 14 months in an apartment not far from downtown. We split the lease, shared expenses, even had a joint savings account that we both referred to as our future. There was a ring, too, not on my finger yet, but chosen, paid for, waiting. From the outside, we looked stable. That's the word people like to use when they don't look too closely. Ethan liked to describe himself as spontaneous, free-spirited, easygoing. What that actually meant, what I learned too slowly, was that he liked to push boundaries and then watch how people reacted when they pushed back. And if you did push back, he had a way of tilting his head slightly, softening his voice, and asking why you were being insecure. I ignored that longer than I should have. The guys' trip had been planned for weeks. Beach house, group chat that never stopped buzzing. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. I didn't question it. I don't monitor people. I observe them. And I remember thinking at one point that everything felt normal. Safe even. That illusion lasted right up until the moment he walked out of the bedroom with a handful of swim trunks and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing a set of projections that suddenly felt very far away from my actual life. He tossed the clothes onto the counter, still half laughing at something on his phone. Then he looked at me and said almost casually, "I've been thinking." There's a tone people use when they say that, a tone that tells you the thinking is already finished. And whatever comes next isn't a discussion. "I don't want to feel restricted anymore," he continued, shrugging slightly, like this was just another passing thought. "Trips like this, they change people. I just want freedom, no pressure, no consequences." I didn't say anything. Not yet. I was watching him. The way his posture shifted just slightly. The way he didn't quite meet my eyes after that sentence. And then he said it. Clean, direct, almost bored. "Either we open the relationship while I'm gone, or we're done." If you've never had your life rearranged by a single sentence, it's hard to explain what that moment feels like. There's no explosion, no immediate heartbreak, just stillness. Like your brain pauses everything else to process the weight of what you just heard. I didn't ask who. I didn't ask how long he'd been thinking about it. I didn't ask if there was already someone else, because none of those questions actually mattered anymore. I just looked at him and said very calmly, "No problem." He smiled. And that was the moment I understood everything. Because that smile wasn't relief. It was victory. He thought he had just expanded his options, without losing his safety. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't agreeing to his terms. I was agreeing with the ending. He went back to packing after that, humming, talking about flight times, mentioning how they might extend the trip if it was fun. Every few minutes he glanced at me, waiting for something, a reaction, a question, jealousy, anything. I gave him nothing. Eventually, the silence got to him. "You're really okay with this?" he asked, leaning against the counter, studying my face like he was trying to find the crack. "Yes," I said, "absolutely." That seemed to confuse him more than anger would have. He frowned slightly. "Do you want to set, I don't know, rules or something? Boundaries? Communication?" I shook my head, already turning back to my laptop. "No need." That was when the edge crept into his voice. A subtle shift, like he wasn't entirely sure whether he was still in control of the situation. He smirked, trying to recover it. "See, this is why I love you," he said. "You're not controlling like other girls." I didn't respond. "Most people would freak out," he continued. "But you're mature. You get it." I nodded once. Not because I agreed, but because I had already moved past the point where his interpretation mattered. What he didn't know was that in that exact moment, I had already started planning my exit. For him, the conversation was about freedom. For me, it was about finality. That night, he fell asleep easily, smiling even, like someone who believed they had just negotiated a better version of their life. I lay next to him in the dark, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, already living in a version of mine where he didn't exist. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel heartbroken. Not yet. I felt clear. Because when someone looks you in the eye and tells you they are willing to risk losing you to get what they want, they've already made their decision. All that's left is whether you believe them. I did. And I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I didn't try to convince him to stay the person I thought he was. I simply accepted the version of him he had just shown me. And quietly, I began preparing for the life that came after. The next morning didn't feel dramatic. There was no heavy silence, no tension thick enough to choke on. Just routine. That's the part people don't talk about. How ordinary everything feels right before your life splits into before and after. Ethan left around 10 to get his nails cleaned up for the trip. He kissed me lightly on the cheek on his way out, like nothing had shifted. Like he hadn't just placed our entire relationship on a conditional clause the night before. "Don't work too hard," he said. I smiled faintly. "Have fun." The door closed behind him, and that was when everything actually began. I didn't sit there and process emotions. I didn't replay the conversation. I opened my laptop. Because once something becomes clear, emotion becomes inefficient. Execution doesn't. The first call I made was to the leasing office. I kept my voice neutral, professional. "I wanted to ask about early termination options," I said, pulling up the lease agreement as I spoke. "Fees, notice period, process." The woman on the other end walked me through it step by step. Penalties, timelines, requirements. It wasn't cheap, but neither is staying in the wrong place. I wrote everything down. Then I thanked her, hung up, and moved to the next item. The joint savings account. It had always been framed as a symbol of trust, something we were building together. But numbers don't lie, even when people do. I pulled up the account history and scanned through the deposits. 80% of the balance was mine. Consistent contributions, bonuses, transfers. His contributions were there, but smaller, irregular. That didn't make him a bad person, but it did clarify something important. This wasn't equal, and it didn't need to stay shared. I didn't move anything yet, not until I had everything lined up. That's the difference between reacting and deciding. Next was the ring. It was in the back of my dresser, still in its box, untouched, waiting for a future that no longer existed. I took it out slowly, holding it in my palm for a second longer than necessary. It was beautiful. Clean design. Exactly what I had imagined when we picked it out together. Back when I thought we were moving towards something permanent. I placed it back in the box, then into the original bag, then set it on the table next to my laptop. One more item on the list. When Ethan came back, the energy in the apartment shifted, but only on his side. He was glowing. Fresh nails, fresh confidence. He dropped his bag by the door and launched straight into stories. "One of the guys is already talking about bringing someone back to the house," he said with a laugh. "It's going to be wild." I looked up at him briefly. "That sounds eventful." He grinned, watching me closely. "Hope you won't get jealous if I do the same." There it was. Another test. Another push. I didn't hesitate. "Have fun," I said. And then, almost as an afterthought, "What time is your flight again?" The flicker of confusion in his eyes was small, but it was there. He told me the time. I nodded and went back to my screen. That was the moment something subtle shifted. Not for me, for him, because for the first time, he wasn't getting the reaction he expected. And without that reaction, he didn't know where he stood anymore. That night, he packed the rest of his things for the trip. Clothes, chargers, shoes. Normal things. I packed something too. Not in a suitcase. In a folder. Documents. Passwords. Account access. A checklist that had nothing to do with travel and everything to do with leaving. We moved around each other in the apartment like we were still in sync. Like nothing had changed. But there was a distance now. Invisible. Final. He fell asleep quickly again. I didn't. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet rhythm of his breathing. And I realized something that felt almost unsettling in its simplicity. He thought this was temporary. A shift. An expansion. Something we would adjust to. But for me, there was no adjustment. There was only a line, and he had already crossed it. The morning of his flight, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was anxious, because I was ready. I moved through the apartment quietly. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened my laptop. And started moving money. The transfer was clean. Legal. Documented. I calculated my portion carefully, based on contribution, not emotion. Then moved it into a new account under my name only. I left his share untouched. This wasn't punishment. It was separation. The confirmation email came through within seconds. I archived it without reading it twice. Next, the ring. I picked up the bag. Checked that the receipt was still inside. Everything in place. No hesitation. When Ethan woke up, the apartment filled with movement again. Drawers opening, footsteps, half-finished sentences. He was buzzing, running on excitement and anticipation. He came into the kitchen, still adjusting his shirt, hair slightly messy. "Did Did you see my charger? He asked. By the couch, I said without looking up. He grabbed it, then leaned down and kissed me lightly on the cheek. Don't wait up, he said with a grin. Then, after a beat, unless you're out too, I smiled. Have a great trip. He studied my face for a second longer than usual, like he was trying to solve something. Then he shrugged it off, picked up his suitcase, and left. Just like that. No argument. No closure. No awareness. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. I stood there for a moment, not frozen, just acknowledging it. Then I moved. I sent the written notice to terminate the lease, paid the early termination fee. Expensive. Yes, but cheaper than staying attached to someone who treated commitment like a flexible option. I scheduled movers for the following week, confirmed dates, time slots, access instructions. I forwarded my mail, changed passwords, banking, email, subscriptions, anything that had ever been shared, separated. That afternoon, I went to return the ring. The store was quiet. Soft lighting, neutral music, the kind of place designed for beginnings, not endings. The clerk smiled when I approached the counter. Hi, how can I help you today? I'd like to return this, I said, placing the bag gently in front of her. She opened it, checked the contents, looked up at me briefly. Is everything okay? Yes, I said, and I meant it, because by that point, everything was already handled. She processed the return, gave me the confirmation, and just like that, another piece of a future that no longer existed was gone. By the time Ethan's plane took off, there was nothing left between us that hadn't already been undone. He just didn't know it yet. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from him. A selfie at the airport. Him and his friends smiling. Captioned, "Miss you already. This is going to be good for us." I looked at the message for a moment, then replied with a single heart emoji. Not to keep him, not to reassure him, but because there was no point explaining something he wouldn't understand until it was already finished. He thought the open relationship meant freedom. What he didn't realize was that I was already free. And 2 days later, the first crack appeared. The first crack didn't come with anger. It came with a question. 2 days into his trip, my phone buzzed late at night. Ethan, a simple message. The place is amazing, but something feels off. What are you up to? I was sitting in the middle of my living room, boxes stacked neatly against the wall. Half my life already sorted into categories: keep, store, discard. I looked at the message for a moment before replying. Busy with work, settling a few things. It was the truth, just not the version he was imagining. A few minutes passed. Then another message. What kind of things? I didn't answer that one, because details weren't for him anymore. The next morning, the tone shifted. Subtle, but sharper. Hey, quick question. Why does our savings account look lower? There it was. Not concern, not curiosity. Awareness. I could almost see the moment it registered for him. The numbers didn't match his expectations. The safety net had changed. I replied simply. I moved my portion into my own account. No explanation. No apology. No softness. Just fact. I watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, reappear. Long message forming, shortening, rewriting itself in real time. I didn't wait for it. I blocked his number, then his messaging apps, then social media. Every channel, every access point, one by one. Clean, deliberate, final. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because that conversation had already ended, and continuing it would only invite confusion. The silence afterward was immediate, noticeable. For the first time in a long time, my phone stopped demanding my attention. No rapid-fire texts, no emotional hooks, no expectation to respond. Just quiet. I went back to what I was doing. That afternoon, the leasing office confirmed the termination date. I forwarded the confirmation to my personal email, archived the thread. Another box checked. Later that night, my email lit up. Unknown numbers, missed calls, voicemails. I didn't listen to them. Didn't need to. If something was truly urgent, it could wait, because urgency doesn't undo decisions. By the next morning, the emails started. Long ones, short ones, subject lines shifting in tone. Hey, can you explain what's going on? Natalie, this isn't funny. Why are you ignoring me? Answer your phone. I opened none of them fully. I didn't need to read every word to understand the pattern. Confusion first, then irritation, then the beginning of panic. He tried reaching me through other people next. One of his friends messaged me on LinkedIn, of all places. Hey, Ethan's really worried. He said you've been acting strange. Everything okay? I stared at the message, then closed the tab. No reply. Another email came in later that day. This one from a different address. A friend of his. Just checking. Ethan said things got weird before he left. He's concerned about you. Concern. That word almost made me smile, because the only person who hadn't been concerned, when it actually mattered, was him. I archived that one too. What he couldn't understand, what none of them could understand, was that this wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reactive. It was procedural. Every step had already been decided the moment he gave me the ultimatum. I was just following through. The rest of that day was logistics. Movers confirmed. New apartment approved. Deposit paid, my account only. Direct deposit redirected. Subscription separated. Every shared thread cut cleanly. That night, I received a notification from the jewelry store. Refund processed. The money hit my account the next morning. Seeing that balance adjust felt grounding, like closing a loop that had been left open too long. Meanwhile, Ethan was still on his trip. But from what I heard later, the atmosphere had changed. Fast. The carefree energy? Gone. Replaced by tension. According to one of the people who eventually reached out, he spent most of the third day glued to his phone, refreshing, typing, deleting, trying again, snapping at his friends, drinking more than usual, complaining that I was being dramatic, that I had agreed to everything, and then turned it into a problem, that I was punishing him. What he didn't say, what he probably didn't even realize, was that he never once asked how I felt. Not before the ultimatum. Not after. Not even when things started falling apart. He only noticed something was wrong. When the structure he depended on disappeared, 2 days later, he tried again. This time through my work email. Different tone, carefully constructed, measured. We should pause everything until I get back and talk in person. I think we're making decisions too fast. I read that one. Once. Then archived it. Because the speed wasn't the problem. The clarity was, he was still treating this like a negotiation. Like something that could be adjusted. Reframed. Saved. I wasn't. By the time his return flight was scheduled, there was nothing left to discuss. I knew the exact time he would land. Not because I was tracking him, because I had scheduled something else for that same afternoon. The unit walkthrough with the leasing office. Intentional. Precise. I didn't want overlap. Didn't want a scene. Didn't want a moment where emotions could complicate what had already been finalized. Separation. Should stay clean. He found out the hard way. I didn't see it happen, but I heard about it. He showed up at the apartment, dragging his suitcase, tired, irritated, still expecting something familiar. Instead, he was met with a half-empty space. Boxes gone, furniture missing, the life he had left behind, already dismantled. The building manager explained the situation. Lease termination. Movers. Process already underway. Irreversible. That was when it shifted. From confusion to reality. He tried calling me from the lobby phone. Blocked. He emailed again. Longer this time. Less attitude. More urgency. I didn't think you would actually do something like this. I thought we were just talking. Open relationship doesn't mean ending everything. We need to talk before this goes too far. I didn't reply, because it had already gone exactly as far as it needed to. That evening, I moved into my new place. It was smaller, quieter, empty in a way that didn't feel lonely, just unclaimed. No shared closets, no overlapping habits, no background tension, just space. I set my mattress on the floor. No bed frame yet, no decorations, just the basics. And for the first time in months, I felt lighter, not happier, not relieved, just unburdened. The next day, he escalated. The next morning, I was at my desk reviewing a report when my phone buzzed. Not a message. An internal call from building security. "Hi, Natalie," the guard said. "There's someone here asking for you. He says it's urgent." I already knew who it was. Not because I expected him to come, but because I understood him. Urgency, for him, only existed when something slipped out of his control. "I'm not expecting anyone," I said calmly. There was a pause. "He says his name is Ethan. He's insisting." I leaned back slightly in my chair, looked out the window. The city moved like it always did. Unaware, unaffected. Is he causing a disturbance? Not exactly, but he's upset. Of course he was. Upset wasn't the same as entitled to access. "I don't know him," I said. Another pause. Then, understood. The line disconnected. I went back to my screen. But I didn't miss the shift inside me. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just confirmation. Because that moment, more than anything else, made it clear that he still believed this was temporary. That if he pushed hard enough, if he showed up in person, if he forced proximity, he could pull me back into a conversation I had already left. He was wrong. Later that afternoon, an email came through. No subject line, just his name. I opened it. For the first time since everything started, I read it carefully. Every word. No accusations this time. No edge. Just desperation. "I never meant to lose you. That wasn't the point. I thought you'd push back. I thought we'd argue. I thought you'd fight for us. I didn't think you'd just disappear. I didn't think you'd actually take it this far." I read that part twice, Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. Perfectly. He hadn't been asking for freedom. Not really. He had been asking for reassurance, for validation, for proof that he could stretch the boundaries of the relationship and still be chosen, still be safe, still be irreplaceable. And when I didn't react, when I didn't fight, when I didn't try to hold on to him, it broke the script he had written in his head. I closed the email, archived it, because understanding someone doesn't mean you owe them a response. After that, the emails didn't stop. They just changed. At first, they swung back toward anger. You blindsided me. This is manipulative. You're punishing me for being honest. Then came the rationalizations. I didn't really mean an open relationship. It was just about feeling desired. You should have known that. Then bargaining. We can fix this. Let's try counseling. We can set boundaries. We can close the relationship again. At one point, he even wrote, let's just reset, pretend none of this happened. I almost smiled at that one. Not because it was funny, because it was revealing. He thought the problem was the outcome, not the decision that created it. I never responded. Not once. I set up a filter. Every email from him went straight into a folder I never opened. No notifications. No previews. No subject lines appearing on my screen. He didn't need to be blocked anymore. He was contained. That distinction mattered, because I wasn't avoiding him. I was done receiving input. And the difference between those two things is everything. My life, meanwhile, became quiet. Not empty. Not lonely. Just undisturbed. At work, my focus sharpened. No more checking my phone between tasks. No more adjusting my tone in messages to avoid conflict. No more replaying conversations in my head before going home. I took on a new project. Finished it ahead of schedule. Started sleeping through the night again, cooking without commentary, living without friction. Mutual friends stopped reaching out eventually, not because they didn't care, because there was nothing to engage with. Drama needs participation, and I wasn't participating. From what I heard later, that was the part Ethan struggled with the most. Not the breakup, not the logistics, the silence. He wanted something to push against. Anger, hurt, even resentment. Anything that would confirm he still had a place in my emotional world. But silence gave him nothing. And without that, he had nowhere to go. The irony was, he accused me of avoiding accountability, while refusing to take any himself. The ultimatum had been his. The consequences were mine to choose. By the second week, things shifted again. On his side, without responses from me, he started filling the silence with his own narrative. Friends, coworkers, anyone who would listen. In one version, I overreacted. In another, I was manipulative. In another, I had been emotionally distant, and he was just trying to fix things. The details changed. The conclusion didn't. None of it was his fault. It never is. When someone isn't ready to face themselves, the email folder kept growing. I never opened a single one. Not out of discipline, out of disinterest, because I already knew what they contained. Variations of the same refusal to accept what had happened. What I did read were confirmations. Lease finalized. Utilities closed. Deposit processed. Everything clean. Everything complete. One evening, a mutual friend called. Hesitant. Have you read his latest email? He asked. No. A pause. He said he poured everything into that one. That your silence is cruel. I leaned back thinking for a moment. Then I said something I hadn't said out loud before. If someone gives you an ultimatum that dismantles the relationship, they don't get to decide how you respond when you accept it. Silence on the other end. Then, that was the last time anyone asked me that question. Months passed. Quietly. Naturally. The email count stopped growing at some point. I didn't notice when, only that one day. The number hadn't changed, and that's how it ended. Not with closure. Not with a final conversation. Just the absence of new noise. I never read a single email. People sometimes ask me if I regret that, if I think I should have explained myself, given him closure. My answer is always the same. Explanations are for misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a values check. He wanted the freedom of being single, without the cost of being single. He wanted commitment as a backup plan, something he could step away from and return to when it suited him. He wanted to renegotiate loyalty, like it was a subscription. Pause it, resume it, adjust it. And when he said, open relationship or we're done, I believed him. I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I didn't try to become someone who could accept less just to keep him. I chose the option that preserved my self-respect. Breaking the lease cost money. Returning the ring cost less than keeping it. Separating my finances wasn't revenge. It was alignment. The life I have now, the quiet, steady, intentional life, was built on a single decision. Made clearly. Followed through completely. If there's anything to take from this, it's simple. Ultimatums are not invitations. They are declarations. And when someone shows you they're willing to risk losing you to get what they want, believe them. The first time, I did, and I walked away without looking back.